Hello, everybody. Welcome back to my Daily Dose with Tim. Today is season 3, episode 24. And we're going to continue to explore the combination of a hard strategy and a soft strategy that we've been going through. If you have not been watching the previous episodes for this season, make sure you actually go back and do that for yourself, just so that the dots can connect a lot better for you. So today, like I said, it's part 2. And yesterday we already started on how we actually go through a fix and flip. So at this point, if you recall, this is where we left off in the previous episodes, which is a very high level calculation. Okay, so a very high level calculations or formula or a deal analysis process, however you want to call it. The idea is let's dig in now. First thing first, fix and flip. We always need to understand, how in the beginning, the total acquisition portion shows up on your spreadsheet. If you recall from one of the previous episodes, there are typically speaking 3 different phases in a deal anatomy, in the lifetime of a deal. There's the acquisition phase, then there is the value add / cash flowing phase, and then there's the exit phase. So in this particular case, because it's a fix and flip, we are always planning for a short time from beginning to end, because in this case, it covers all 3. And so when you can have that kind of thought process in your mind, it makes it a lot easier. It makes it a lot easier for you to run your numbers, especially whenever you got to be looking at a deal on the go. Okay, because a lot of the real estate investors, we sometimes travel, we sometimes fly, drive to look at properties. And so again, it's basically what we call a shopping trip. We love shopping. I love shopping too. It's just that I love shopping for properties that is going to yield great returns and good cash flow. And so remember, if you're like me, like I said, I do tend to get a little emotional. So these days, I don't drive a flight to look at properties a lot anymore. I really just want to focus on the numbers. However, for some of you, you might still be wanting to do that, and that's totally okay. Okay, it's what we call driving for dollars, walking for dollars, sometimes even flying for dollars. Okay, so purchase price, PP, and then usually when it comes to purchase price, we have to look at the closing costs. So your typical closing cost, let's say I'm going to talk about it on a smaller scale. Like I said, this is a high level calculation. However, I want to give you a few pointers because I understand that my audience, not just the fact that it's broad globally, it's also broad in experience level. And I've personally trained people that have never even purchased a principal residence yet. So as in they've never even gone through an offer process, applying for mortgage or applying for a loan of any sort, or even asking for OPM. And that's okay. Okay, because everybody comes in at different times, and we like to say that trust your talent meets you where you are. It doesn't matter if you've got 0 rental properties or 0 property under your belt, or if you got a few hundred or even a few thousand doors, because remember, it's all about going back to the basics. And one of the quotes that I recently heard is that so many people would get so much better at what they want to do, especially the advanced stuff, if they just focus on the beginner stuff. Okay, so again, I want to take everybody back here. So your closing costs typically, let's say for a single family homes in this situation, typically would be your appraisal as well as your inspection and your legal fees. Those are generally the 3 big items when you're purchasing a smaller property. Now, with bigger properties, there naturally will be more things that we got to figure in. However, this is where we're gonna stop for now as the demonstration, okay? And then you get your renovation cost. Typically speaking, that comes from a quote from the general contractor. So a few episodes ago, when we were discussing how to work with our general contractors, we also talked about the differences between estimates versus quotes. And so remember, this is typically your rental costs. However, I also want to make sure that everybody understands that you actually budget in a contingency. So many people forget to do that after getting the quotes from their general contractors. And some of you might even want to go, well, hang on a second, my general contractor is so good. They actually already budgeted it in before they even show me the quote, a contingency fund. I will always encourage you to do your own in addition to it, because again, if you've done a few deals, if you've been in this industry for a few years like me now, you understand that rarely does anything go as planned. And so what that means really is that you want to learn to stress test yourself. The moment you don't want to stress test your own deals, it usually tells me that you are getting emotional about it. And as a result, it's going to be challenging for your deals to actually yield the results you actually truly needed to. Okay, so make sure you do that. And last but not least, holding cost. Holding cost, as I mentioned before, super important, simply because of the fact that this is where amateurs fail. And by amateurs, I don't just mean the TV show amateurs. I also mean that there are people that literally took a couple of courses, short-term courses, and they've never even been trained to factor in all the holding costs that they are supposed to budget in. So first thing first, as I mentioned in the previous episodes already, definitely, typically speaking, your regular pity payment, because I'm going to assume that like an educated investor, you are learning how money works, which means you're not afraid of getting yourself into good debt as long as you know it's going to yield good return. Okay, so what that means is in this particular scenario, your basic holding costs would definitely include your pity payment, as we mentioned, PITI. So that's your principal, interest, taxes, and insurance at the very minimum. Depends on the property type. You know, I'm not a big fan of anything that's got condo boards. However, some townhouses will also pass the test in this particular case. So I'm going to put that into this category. I'm just going to put a little star next to it, not to say it's important, but to say that if this is the property type, because you're choosing a market, remember S&P, because you're choosing a market to go into, that in a way townhouses might yield good returns. Why? Because that's where the bulk part of the buying pool, meaning who you're selling it to, your exit strategy, gives you the most opportunities. This is probably what you want to make sure that you include it as well. And definitely, last but not least, your utilities. Okay, your contractors on site need electricity. Depending on the time of the year, the season, they definitely need gas so that there is furnace or there's heat coming on. I know sometimes, depends on where you are, it's electric baseboard heaters. So that's fine too. And you need waste, you need water, sewage treatments. All those things need to be budgeted in the duration, okay? In the duration that you're running it. Now, the other thing is, for some of you, if you're not getting a mortgage that's got principal and interest payments, then you might just be factoring in the interest cost. And let's say if you're borrowing, and if you're not borrowing from what we would typically call a major bank or an A lender, most of the times you may even have entry and exit fees when you're taking out a loan, so that you might want to take that into consideration. The other one is whenever you're taking out a loan, maybe penalties as well. And regardless of what you think it is, again, budget in a contingency. So contingencies such as maybe pest control, because you can put that into your rental costs or your holding costs, because sometimes when you start opening up walls or fixing things up, replacing things, including appliances, bathroom fixtures, and whatnot, you might find surprises that you really weren't expecting. Okay. And the other thing about holding costs is, even if you do believe that it's, let's say, from beginning to end, a 3 months project, I would always encourage you to double it up. Okay. And so if you remember from the previous episodes, in a light rental situation, really cosmetic fixes 2 to 4 weeks, but then we budget for 3 months. So you can already see that I am actually not just doubling up that work. So depending on, once again, your own level of risk tolerance, which nobody really talks about, is what happens when you put the property back on the market and you're not able to sell it in the time frame that you need to sell it. Maybe if it's your own funds, you are under less pressure. However, at the end of the day, what that also means that is that you are bleeding. You are not making the return yet. And it's slowly eating into your profit margin. And so that's also not healthy. So make sure you stress test when you are running the deal analysis. Okay, even to the point that you want to find out when your break even is. So what that means is, let's just say that, for example, this particular deal, you're budgeting for 3 months, and within 3 months, you're supposed to make anywhere between $20,000 to $35,000 once it's sold. Okay, once it's sold. However, let's just say that we're gonna forgo the higher end. We're just gonna go for the low end. If you were expecting a low end return of $20,000, and every single month, all the holding costs adding up is, let's say, $2,500. You take $20,000, you divide it by 2,500. That means after the 3 months period that you've calculated, it starts to eat into your profit margin. Now, 20,000 divided by 2,500, that's 8. Basically, that means after the initial 3 months, you have an additional 8 months before your entire profit margin is completed, eroded. So you got a full timeline now of 11 months. So within that 11 months, you also want to make sure that this property either gets sold or you're ready to exercise another exit strategy. Okay, and so let's keep going. After repair value, this typically also is the same for a lot of us as your actual sold price. Again, you may have a different sales strategy that you've worked up with your listing agent at the end there. However, the point is, we use ARV as our typical sold price, and then you deduct your total cost of purchase and reno. Sometimes in a different calculation, we will call it our total initial investment. What that means is, how much did it cost us? What was the initial investment that we gotta put in to bring this property up to the standards that we can exercise the exit strategies that we've chosen for it. Okay, last but not least, your sales cost. Your sales cost, again, if you're a licensed agent, feel free to list it yourself. However, for many of us, if we are simply coming at it as an educated and professional investor perspective, usually means that you are going to be relying on the agent on your power team to sell it. And that's totally okay, because our focus should be on duplicating and cookie cutting our own processes so that you can actually stack your deals and allow everybody to do what they are good at. Okay, so sales costs typically will include the commissions that you've previously negotiated, or whatever industry standard it is, if this is your first deal and you're building your relationship. Okay, and then also, don't forget that in addition to whatever number you get as a sales commission, you typically have to tag on the sales tax wherever you are. So many people forget to do that, and then they miscalculate their final profit level. And the other side of all of that is really just simply another legal fee. So remember, there's legal fees when you enter a deal and legal fees when you exit a deal. So in short, the sales costs are really two simple items in most cases. Again, the bigger the deals, the more complicated a lot of the sub items in these categories will be. And as a result, you get your total profit. And so now, as promised, I'm going to show you an example deal. And this is actually a real deal that our trainer and mentor, Jeffrey, on the Trust Your Talent team, who teaches this course actually, had done recently in the last 12 months. And so here it is, showing you some pictures that Jeffrey's included. You can see there is no major structural changes. We're not moving walls. We're not even adding anything fancy. Okay, updating the kitchen, repainting it, retile it, restone it, and staging it a little bit. Okay, who loves that pastel green? And look at the difference, how to modernize it, bring it up to shape. Okay, front door entryway, look at the difference. So with that said, here are the numbers. Here are the numbers. So for some of us, okay, the other side of all of this, when you are adding closing cost and or renovation cost, if you live in a province or a state or a county or an area where there is what we call land transfer tax, or in the UK, you guys call it stamp duty. Okay, then you might want to factor that into the closing cost side of things. And these are the numbers. And so according to the formula that we just went through together, we have the purchase price plus closing plus reno plus holding costs. Total in is 779. Okay. The sold price is 860. So minus total cost, minus commissions and legal fees. The profit on this deal is $46,000, 3 months in and out. However, let's take a look at how Jeffrey actually creatively did this deal. And honestly, it is very creative simply because of the fact that this is a single family type of property. And you'll notice that there is a 10% vendor take back, VTB. That's what it stands for. Seller financing or vendor take back. So 20% down payment, as we mentioned. If you got $720,000 burning a hole in your pocket, please, please, please learn how to leverage, because this will drastically change the numbers later on. And when I say numbers, I really mean in this particular case, the return on investment. The less amount, the less money you leave in a deal, the higher the ROI. And remember, when we went through the top 6 investing priorities, your ROI number basically tells you how hard your money is working for you. So do you want that number to be high, or do you want that number to be low? If you want that number to be high, you got to learn to leverage properly. Okay. So 20% down payment on a 720,000 purchase works out to be 144,000, and plus closing rental holding costs as shown up above. If you see below the $720,000 mark, that's adding up to 14,000 from closing, and the 33,000 from renovation, and the 12,000 from holding costs, and then minus the 10% vendor take back. So really, total out of pocket in this case for Jeffrey is only 131,000. Without the vendor take back, it would have been 203,000. So again, the amount goes down, the overall return on investment number will improve. And so on that note, if you look at this, profit is $46,000 divided by 131,000. It's 35.11%. Okay, it's 31.11%. This, in this particular case, you can call it an ROI, and you can also call it a cash on cash. Okay. However, if you recall the definition, and the difference between ROI and cash on cash usually is that there is a beginning and there's an end. Okay. There's a timeline attached to your calculation, whereas a cash on cash is usually an annualized number. And so let's go and take a look. If each deal is 3 months long and you are able to stack them and do 4 in 1 year, then what that means is your annualized ROI, or your cash on cash, from this particular strategy, from doing something like this over and over again, is 140.5% return. Okay, this is just simple math. Numbers don't lie. And this is why we always say, let the numbers do the talking when you are an educated and professional investor. Okay, and so at this point, let's go back to raising funds. Assuming that you've been educated enough and you've got support from coaches and mentors, and now you've actually managed to find yourself a deal, you've done the deal analysis, you've done your due diligence on the market, on the exit strategy, and this is the deal analysis that you have created. And so through your bank of love circles, so we like to call them bank of love circles, people that you've known for a long time. Again, most of us, that's where it starts. Okay, unless you're very much like me, you decided to take the long road just so that you can prove a few people in your life wrong and that you can make this work. That's totally fine. Get yourself into a community like Trust Your Talent, for example. The students, they all support each other on their deals, emotionally and professionally and financially, most importantly for many people. And that's totally okay. You just want to get yourself within a circle where you share the same value, you share the same training background. And so by the time somebody else presents you with a deal, you know that the confidence level that you have for the deal and for this person is much, much higher compared to a complete stranger. Okay. And so coming back here, if you are able to, as we quote Jerry Maguire, the movie and Tom Cruise's character a lot, when you can show me the money, it makes it a lot easier with those factors added up. Okay, that you've got yourself educated, that you are trained the same way, that you've got your mentor support, you've got somebody else vetting your numbers, and you're in the same community. It makes your money partner a lot more at ease when it comes to opening up the purse strings, so to speak, so that you can actually team up on this one deal or multiple deals together. So for example, if you didn't have the $131,000 in your back pocket, however, within the community, you're able to find somebody else that has the qualification and the 131,000. You're managing all the work, okay? At the end of the day, let's just say that for demonstration's sake, you decided to go 50-50, okay? For 50-50, now each of you takes home $23,000 at the end of 3 months. Is that so bad? Okay, again, the concept here is share the wealth. Or as I've learned from one of my mentors is I would rather have 50% of something. And that something in this case is cash, is profit. Okay, so I would rather have 50% of something than 100% of nothing. Okay, I want you to hear that again. I would rather have 50% of something than 100% of nothing. And it's so important when you are starting to get into this industry. As I keep mentioning, when you are an educated investor, the true mindset here is please don't be greedy. Don't be greedy. Share the wealth. Okay. You now are equipped with knowledge and skills that the average people don't because they were reluctant to invest in themselves. And that's okay. You don't have to judge them. See them as some of your best partners too. Okay, if you want to start with a bank of love, mom and dad, for example, for many, many of investors, ranging from 20-something-year-olds all the way to even 40-something-year-olds. And the thing is, it's not that the bank of love money is easy. For me, the bank of love money was the hardest money to get because my parents doubted me about my ability to learn how to do this and to execute on it, to actually make a living out of it. And that's totally fine. Okay, however, many of you potentially have the support from the bank of love, and that's where you start. And the other thing is, I'm going to ask you this. When was the last time you've heard your bank of love? And this can go beyond your parents, can be your siblings as well, and maybe your best friends, you know, people that you've known and spent time with over the last 2 decades, 3 decades. So again, when was the last time these people in your life were able to trust somebody that you've known for years, somebody that have invested in their education, leveraging real estate investing, somebody that knows how to use this hard asset to generate this kind of return? Okay, so when you're able to show them your credentials, the numbers, your thought process, the profit, again, show them the money, it makes it a lot simpler and a lot easier. It no longer becomes an uphill battle for you. And so think about it that way. And our job is to educate them one deal at a time. So on that note, I hope you got something out of it. And I've been getting quite a few questions already, and I know I will be reviewing them in the next episode, just so that the numbers and the concepts so far can actually be more connected together for many, many of you. And so on that note, I just want to say thank you so much again for joining me today. I know a lot of you are consuming this content. If you like it, do me a favor, share it, like it, comment on it. I get a lot of DMs with questions and comments, and I know a lot of you are shy. I'm used to that already, and that's totally fine. I always say that a lot of the times when I go to a classroom scenario, I'm still sitting at the back table usually. And so that's my learning style, and that's totally okay. And because of the environment that we have on Facebook and social media, I totally understand why. So Regardless, if you are one of those people who want to openly share and comment, go for it. If not, I'm perfectly good with all the DMs that I've been getting from you with questions, with comments, and your love and support. So on that note, once again, I would like you to have a great rest of the day. I know the week is almost done. We got one more episode coming up this week tomorrow. And as I mentioned, I'm going to answer some questions and round out the last few episodes together for everyone. So with that said, have a great rest of the day and live well.